Hey y'all, before we begin, I would just like to show you this very important statistic. This is my subscribe versus unsubscribe watch time, which means a lot of you are enjoying my content and coming back to it very regularly, but not subscribing. Please reconsider that because it's a very easy and free way to help me out, and it also keeps you updated with my content. This video is sponsored by DJ the Lazy Gamer, Zach Haji, and Crimson Manifesto. What does it mean to be a clan? What if Hinata was on Team 7, Part 3? Kakashi's bell test kicks off. However, as soon as it does, and just before her teammates were about to scatter in opposite directions, Hinata assertively reveals the secret behind the entire thing, making sure to rob Kakashi of his largest advantage right off the bat, just as she'd been taught to by her father for clan proceedings. She figures this is slightly similar in a way, and optimistically hopes this whole secondary testing issue can be solved with diplomacy, since they are all at least countrymen. Kakashi, unfazed, simply looks between the three with little interest before pulling out make-out tactics and telling Hinata she can go on. She does, citing that the academy has already deemed them worthy of the getting rank, so any further testing of that level of skill would be irrelevant. If he wishes to cultivate teamwork in their group, then training is what they should immediately engage in. Kakashi lazily rebuts that it's tradition, while Hinata counters that as she's learned from watching the customs of her clan for long enough, just because a practice is tradition doesn't mean it's either positive or productive. Naruto and Sasuke are stupefied, both by the revelation and the anticlimactic turnout of what they had expected would be an all-out scuffle. They continue to watch as Kakashi and Hinata trade verbal jabs at a Kage level, and eventually can only glance to one another in a shared sense of disappointment for the lack of action. Finally, Kakashi makes a wager, having been forced to put his book away in order to focus on the conversation long ago. He then points to the bentos he snagged from Hinata and gives an ultimatum. Since Hinata seems to be the only one doing the legwork to get the trio out of this test, he wants Naruto and Sasuke to involve themselves and prove they can cooperate. He orders them to eat the lunches she brought for them, saying they'll treat it like a lord and his retainer sharing a cup of sake, as he'd like them to agree to name her the team's second in command. If they do, then he will take them all on as his students, sans the secret test. Sasuke turns away in both embarrassment and derision, while Naruto obviously vocally and vulgarly voices his own dissent to the proposal. Hinata, in a very rare showing for her in this timeline, suddenly blushes beet red and begins to stammer, but Kakashi shuts them all and finishes with their second choice. If they refuse his terms, then each of them will have to get a bell before the sun sets as originally planned. To make the deal even, they even make the test a game. The one who hosts the greatest number of bells at the end decides the future of the team, its composition, and its hierarchy. So very obviously, if he holds the most bells, then he can send them all back to the academy if he wishes. But if even one of them were to get the bell, then no matter what, he'd have to at least pass them. Turning back to Hinata, he specifies that this is the only compromise he can offer her. If she and her teammates can show the bare minimum of skill and teamwork, then they should have nothing to fear. Naruto is eager for the second option, and even Sasuke voices his accordance. However, Hinata points out the futility in this, as they are fresh from the academy and their opponent is a Jonin, not to mention a famous one, and much less one that is old enough to have lived through the Third Shinobi World War. Even she, as the strongest genin in their class from the village's strongest clan, can't hope to defeat an opponent of this caliber. She realizes her poor choice of words too late, as both boys seem to bristle under this claim, Naruto declaring that she is not the strongest, while Sasuke, for the first time Hinata can remember, raises his voice above a murmur to declare that the Hyuga are not the least strongest clan. Rolling her eyes, she agrees with both in an act of placation, but points out that they would only be walking right back into the trap of the bell test if they agreed to the second option. She then offers to hand over all claim of the lieutenant title over to either of her teammates, something Kakashi obviously objects to, as this is changing the terms of the deal. Naruto, however, steps in front of Kakashi and offers his own compromise, asking Hinata how she'd feel about her chances if the Jonin was tired out. Dryly, she says that she'd be slightly more confident at least. But this is good enough for him, as he says they can simply take the Cyclops on in stages then. Not that he'd actually give them the opportunity to even engage. He'd go first, get both bells, and crown himself as the leader of their entire team. Or better yet, he can demand the old man third Hokage train him personally, since it would be a great practice for being Hokage himself. Hinata face palms and argues that this is still the hard way around, and that there's no point to this. But in a replay of his first rebuking of her kindness, the dead lad's demon suddenly snaps back at her that a prissy rich girl from a snooty clan ain't gonna understand it. The path to Hokage isn't supposed to be easy in the first place. This gives her pause, and she mumbles that pride can make people so stupid. But beside her, Sasuke quietly asserts that for once, he agrees with Naruto. Some things one just needs solid proof of, to make sure they still truly exist. A bit concerned by such a statement, she sighs and instead focuses on hoping positivity will bring about an unlikely outcome, as Naruto begins to take on his now iconic, erratic, and bouncy stance, while Kakashi can't help but be reminded a lot more of Obito by this more confident and self-assured version of Naruto, though it isn't as if he has been unaware of the village's infamous delinquent. He assures the Uzumaki that this won't be a schoolyard brawl, and the unwitting Jinchuriki agrees to this as he finishes stretching and suddenly takes on a sprinter's pose. Then in a sudden burst of speed, he crosses the distance between he and Kakashi, and the Jonin actually sees fit to sidestep the blow rather than attempt to block or misdirect it, as he quickly notices hints of red in Naruto's eyes, and on instinct decides to reveal his Sharingan in order to immediately suppress the Nine Tails chakra, an eventuality the Hokage had warned him of given this Naruto's more aggressive disposition. However, in a clear showing that his use of the Bijuu's power is subconscious, the Jinchuriki suddenly backs off in shock before gawking at the spinning red eye, while Sasuke demands to know how Kakashi has such a thing. The Jonin sighs while covering it back up and mumbles he doesn't know them an explanation, as Naruto needs little signal to resume his assault. Showing his own power is still nothing to sneeze at, because he shocks Kakashi with how effectively he has cultivated his basic and flawed taijutsu style born from a lack of correction on the Academy basic katas. When he sees an opening from this sloppy technique, he decides to show Naruto the difference between their strength by delivering a knee shot to his gut too fast to comprehend. But he's again shocked when the sensation is more like bashing one's knee against a mountainside, as it sends a painful tinge up his spine, allowing Naruto to proudly announce his dead last technique by taking the opening this shock has given him and delivering a hardened uppercut in retaliation while reaching for the belts once again with his free hand. But Kakashi is able to leap with the force of the blow and use Naruto's strength against him to make more distance. Seeing taijutsu will be ineffective, Kakashi scoffs that Naruto is too narrow-minded, as he forms a hand sign and suddenly causes the blonde's head to droop forward as he falls for a genjutsu. Looking at the other two Genin, the Jonin snarks that he isn't very tired, but they can send him the next fighter. But he is forced to dodge as the kunai sails past his head. He looks back to see Naruto once again with the red eyes as he surges forward again. Kakashi for a third time is shocked, as Naruto is once again aided by his tail beast somehow, and the boy suddenly reveals another custom technique, one he's dubbed the Demon Barrage Bomb, which entails his charging in and unleashing a hailstorm of high-speed punches, impossible for someone without the ability to heal the damage they do to their arms and shoulders by moving at such. When Kakashi again evades, to his horror, a few of Naruto's blows are enough to gouge out a small tree to the point it slowly begins to tilt and crashes down towards them, forcing him on his back foot due to perpetual evasion, as it becomes clear that Naruto's assertion was not a hollow threat, since his endurance to continue this draining attack and keep on Kakashi's heels is staggering, and ever so slowly the Jonin feels himself being pressed until he is finally cornered and caught up to, resulting in his being pummeled into the dirt. After laying the punishment on thick, since he is a bit worried about Hinata's hesitation to fight the Jonin, Naruto finally ends his barrage bomb and begins to huff and puff, while wincing once the pain in his arms catches up to him. He however brags confidently that this will make him the leader as he reaches for the bells. Then, Kakashi suddenly poofs into smoke, revealing himself to be a shadow clone, just as the real version comes breaking from the ground under Naruto to deliver a powerful secret art, 1,000 Years of Death, which has the power to send Naruto flying headfirst into a tree across the draining field, and much like in the classroom earlier, he knocked himself out. Hinata and Sasuke sweat drop, but it is apparent that Kakashi is indeed a bit more fatigued from the chase and the two high-level techniques he's already used. The Uchiha then steps up next, even though Hinata tries to convince him to reconsider, but he wants to press its advantage before it's lost. Having paid for underestimating Naruto, Kakashi deems to take Sasuke serious from the start, and the Genin begins by forming a series of hand seals at speeds that Jonin has to admit are impressive, before he belches out a massive fireball jutsu that Kakashi avoids without issue. But once again, to his shock, Sasuke forms even more hand signs, and at an almost faster speed this time, spitting out a salvo of smaller fireballs which hone in on Kakashi, signature to the Phoenix Flower Jutsu, forcing the Jonin to leap into the air itself. However, Sasuke's pattern of attack is unchanging, as he calls for a fire dragon bullet after another set of hand seals, sending two flaming dragon heads to also make their way towards Kakashi while he is immobile. That is until the Jonin counters with his own fireball, and uses the ensuing blaze to disappear from Sasuke's line of sight, and teases by throwing his voice around the forest, joking that if Sasuke plans to grab the bells off his charred corpse, then he had better have brought oven mitts. The Avenger looks around casually as he activates his own first stage Sharingan, while Kakashi's voice continues to echo around, very impressed that Genin is able to pull off 3 separate high-level fire ninjutsu, without nearly killing himself in the process. But this fight is over, as he suddenly tries to pull Sasuke underground. However, what he grabs is the illusion of a basic clone, and revealing his position is all the real Sasuke needs. As from the trees, he takes 2 handfuls of leaves before leaping out and throwing them in front of him as he runs through another set of hand seals to activate his custom C-rank ninjutsu, the Baby Bird Blaze, making the leaves catch light and take flight as they burn in the shape of young sparrows, which hone in on Kakashi with a lot more accuracy than the harder to perform Phoenix Flower Jutsu had, forcing the one-eyed Jonin to erect a mud wall. This, however, proves to be a mistake as he soon finds himself bound to it by ninja wire, while Sasuke then unleashes his Dragon Fire Jutsu in order to trap and cook the Jonin alive, forcing the use of another shadow clone, substitution, and body flicker in order to escape, and once again causing Kakashi to burn a significant amount of chakra in a short portion of time. as he'd even revealed his Sharingan again to keep track of all the jutsu the kid had under his belt. Just as he begins to relax, however, Sasuke's Sharingan helps him lock back onto Kakashi, who is again forced into evading as he becomes baffled that Sasuke has this amount of chakra at all, having only really expected to be surprised by Naruto in some way. As a fireball this time nearly clips him, proving he is slowing down, Sasuke seems to speed up, but as he runs through a set of hand seals, the Uchiha suddenly begins to have a nosebleed and fever due to overheating and exhausting himself, and then he faints, causing Hinata to groan in aspiration as she'd only just finished collecting the fallen dead last demon. Huffing in exasperation, she glares at Kakashi, who approaches her before asserting that she knows he's deliberately slowing his breathing so she can't see how tired he really is, and reminds us is useless as her Byakugan reveals just how fast his heart is beating and how desperate his lungs are for air. The Jonin sighs and allows himself to softly huff and puff before questioning if Hinata wants to try and bring this home for her teammates, since they've both gone all out to give her this opportunity. She in turn seemingly wasted by questioning why Kakashi hasn't just failed them, since refusing an easy out the way the boys had should have been an instant DQ. And he agrees, this trio is the worst at teamwork that he's ever tested, but he also admits that they're the most entertaining before he closes his eye in a genuine smile. Just as he does, Hinata breaks towards him as fast as she can, but instead of going for any kind of frontal attack, her target is the bells, which cause Kakashi to try and restrain her to keep her away from them. This is the wrong choice, however, as his having grown tired blinds him to the fact that Hinata has been thinking of cooperation this entire time, and she suddenly proves this when from her pocket she scatters a mass of leaves and broken chunks of wood from her teammates' earlier battles, while carefully imparting her chakra into them with a gentle fist, causing Kakashi to reach into a shower of what has effectively become razor blades due to their organic nature holding chakra so well. He accidentally opens up several cuts on his arm and clothing, forcing him to recoil, but the damage is done as one of the cords for the bells is severed, sending it rolling towards Hinata, who claims the bell was simple subversion of the expectation the first two fights had built up in Kakashi, even going so far as to turn the precognition of the Sharingan against its user, an ability he chalked up to Sasuke being a contemporary this girl measures herself against. Wisely, the seasoned Jonin keeps his distance to rob the Hyuga of her most powerful tool, as he pulls a small scroll from a supply pouch and smoothly draws blood from his finger off its edge to hastily bring out one of his Nenkin, then feeling a bit bad for getting so excited when the resulting summon is Bull, the biggest and strongest of his ninja hounds, rather than one of the more manageable ones. In his defense, however, he had already underestimated every one of these kids, and it'd be embarrassing if he didn't assert the divide between them a bit more. Hinata freezes for a moment as Bull faithfully charges towards her, and the heiress is forced to suppress her inclination to dote on the adorable creature in the middle of a battle. Apologizing, she suddenly blurs from Bull's sight as Kakashi damns himself for assuming that Shinobi so young wouldn't also know the body flicker. She reappears at Bull's side and gently jabs the base of his neck, causing the massive mutt to collapse forward as she pets him before he poofs away. Her glare on Kakashi intensifies, and he sweat drops that it shouldn't take all this to realize he's a bit out of shape, as another intense bout begins with a chase, with Hinata doggedly pressing in closer and closer and forcing Kakashi to stay away rather than try and engage her in taijutsu. This hesitation to attack, however, locks him into evading and focusing his chakra only on that, making it an uphill battle to make a clean enough opening that wasn't one of the outright lethal ones he had no real need for. But Hinata's chakra reserves proved to be much lesser than that of her rivals and teammates, and she finally falters, even seeing her Byakugan retract as she slows and accidentally opens herself wide for Kakashi to go for a knockout blow. But this proves to be another fake out, as the Hyuga heiress shows herself to be ridiculously nimble and flexible as she drops below Kakashi's chop in order to lunge for the final bell, fully aware she won't need it, but also that she'll be unworthy of the one she already has if either Naruto or Sasuke truly fit. She had to achieve total victory for her team. But the Jonin ruthlessly raises his knee to punch the reckless attack, which Hinata runs face first into, but his mistake is taking his eyes off the foot Hinata raised when she lunged, as its heel suddenly whips back to bonk its head like the strike of a scorpion, stunning him momentarily and allowing Hinata to just graze the second bell, before Kakashi catches her hand and stops her, and the two however freeze as the crisp bright day had finally dwindled down to the last lights cast by the sunset. Kakashi tists that they're even before praising Hinata for handling this test so well, all things considered. The Hyuga however falls forward unconscious, forcing her new sensei to hoist her up and bring her back to where their test began in a piggyback. Thankfully, by the time they arrive, Naruto is already awoken and is currently in the middle of smacking and yelling at the still unconscious Sasuke in total confusion as to what's happened. After having him knock it off, Kakashi sits Hinata down next to Sasuke before handing Naruto a smelling salt and telling him to wake them both up, so he doesn't have to repeat himself. Then, he sits next to the memorial stone and cracks open both of the bento boxes Hinata had brought for her teammates, making good on his earlier threat as Naruto's stomach growls irritably, and he grumbles while reviving his teammates. Once the trio of Genin are all conscious again, and he feels his exhaustion sated by the admittedly delicious Hyuga meal, the laid-back Jonin casually thanks Hinata for bringing food, causing her to sweat drop as Naruto yells to know what's going on. Kakashi then fills him in on Sasuke's round, and thus Sasuke and Naruto both on Hinata's round, before revealing to all three Genin that he would be accepting them all as his students. As smiles cross their faces, he admits that he lied about using the test to decide the team hierarchy, as that had always been up to his discretion no matter what, obviously. However, despite that, if Naruto and Sasuke wanted to be on this team, then they would have to do so while looking at Hinata as their leader when he was absent. Naruto again seems to bristle at this, but it is Sasuke who asks the all-important question of why. The son of the leaf Silver Fang pauses, before somewhat long-windedly explaining the significance of the Memorial Stone, and then apologizing for not giving his own proper introductions, once again elaborating that he is Kakashi Hatake. His likes are silly books, board games, and appointment dates that aren't too early in the morning. His dislikes are when people don't get along for petty reasons, and especially when they abandon their friends. And his dream is to one day make it so that people in the village are safe enough to take it easy and relax more, even going so far as to vaguely reveal his past with his original Genin squad mates now he lost them, citing that when he looks back on it, one member was always able to hold their squad together when their sensei wasn't present. And sometimes he'd look back and wonder what could have happened had his sensei simply named her his second in command in his absence and given her aid in easing the tensions between comrades. Both Naruto and Sasuke are made to think after this revelation, and the two look to Hinata, who again goes beet red, as this feels like more pressure than being the eventual clan head after hearing the sensei's story. Then, without hesitation, the demon and Avenger both agree to recognize the Leaf's angel as Kakashi's lieutenant. The Jonin smiles as Hinata nervously pokes her fingers together in embarrassment, and their sensei then gives them their first order of business. Naruto and Sasuke will treat their higher-ranking teammate to dinner since they put her through a technically unnecessary fight and exhausted her, causing Naruto to suddenly go pale as he assumes a rich person's taste will be hell on his measly orphan stipend. He can almost swear that he sees her smirking until Sasuke sighs and assures him that they can split the cost, or he can cover a bit more if necessary since he went along with Naruto's idiocy in the first place. The blonde begins to argue back before begrudgingly thanking his comrade for being nice in his own way, but Hinata assuages their fears with a fairly mundane request, some sweet bean soup and cinnamon buns. The boys look to each other a bit surprised at such an easy task, but nonetheless are relieved. Before he dismisses the trio, Kakashi tells Hinata and Sasuke that Naruto will catch up with them, since there's something very vital the two need to speak about. From here, we would pretty much interrupt for all intents and purposes for the team as a montage of D-ranked missions, used to build camaraderie. Hinata, using her power as second in command, and by threatening interference by the Hyuga, is also able to convince their lazy sensei to begin at least some training, just so she can give her father better progress reports than catching cats at dinner. However, in return, Hinata will have to head a project for Kakashi that he states is very much tied to training, as he sets her to the task of helping her teammates improve on some of their very basic fundamentals, since they're each kind of lacking in something. A request the heir seems rather hesitant to agree to, but as the objectively most responsible person on her team, she begrudgingly goes with it, emphasizing that Kakashi had better make their training worthwhile, and reminding that as a Hyuga clan heiress, he can't simply shove her aside with meaningless busy work. The lazy Jonin agrees to this, stating he wouldn't have chosen her for the position if he didn't think she'd do the best job, and then bragging that she's already made it a lot easier for him to goof off in his free time as the two get cracking on battle plans for this new challenge of theirs. Their first steps are very obviously helping Naruto to gain control over his temper and Sasuke to become more comfortable in interacting and socializing with them, since both are currently their biggest obstacles in total team synchronization. It's not really possible to stop someone from being introverted, but they can at least make the Avenger feel like they are teammates rather than strangers. And this work is very tedious and long for Hinata, as it involves a lot of long days of sitting with Naruto for basically what amount to anger management therapy sessions, as they first go over the root causes for his anger and actually question why it is he reacts the way he does to it, and finally strategies to more efficiently channel it. This has mixed results. It leads to the two at least developing a real understanding of one another, and after enough time, the building blocks of a real friendship are finally there. But this also leads to Hinata recognizing that she is incredibly out of her depth, as her teammates have actual scarring trauma they have to work through, something which adds to the growing sense of worry she's beginning to feel for them. Sasuke's work is technically easier, but no less taxing, as it mostly involves a lot of days of failing to convince him to spend time with them outside of missions and training, then sitting quietly and awkwardly with the boy on the rare times he accepts such invitations. When these concerns are brought up to Hatake though, he comforts Hinata by revealing he knew full well these wouldn't be issues with easy fixes, but at the same time he knew the byproduct of such a goal would be a closer team overall, and he reassures her that she has all the time in the world to help her friends. So, their sensei is true to his word, and rewards all this hard work by deeming it adequate to show the Genin both water and tree walking, as well as how to travel via the trees to help them vastly increase their chakra control. Because yes, I'm still baffled nearly 26 years later into this series that it isn't in the academy curriculum. This would go about as you expect, with Hinata like Sakura getting it near instantly while the boys struggle a bit, but because of Byakugan, these exercises are made a bit boring since she can just look at their feet and play hot and cold till they get the right balance of chakra. This reward is also given because subconsciously, Hinata has also been improving on her own flaws visible to Kakashi, and has begun allowing herself to relax and be a lot less stuffy, since he suspects her grander upcoming duties as a future clan head have likely put too much pressure on her. and making her constantly keep the etiquette, air, and mask of the Hyuga heiress on lest you reflect poorly on her family. But being Naruto's wrangler and Sasuke's hype man forced her into expressing emotions she'd usually keep completely bottled up. This is even confirmed for Kakashi, when the current Hyuga clan head calls him to a meeting to discuss Hinata and her team's futures in terms of a timeline, as he wants to know when Kakashi plans to have the group go on their first C, B, and A ranked missions, as well as how many years into their training he plans to have them enter the tuning exams. Kakashi is honest and blunt about being very loose when it comes to the team, but mentions viewing all 3 of his students as too advanced to continue keeping them weighed down with the menial work he's been giving them, as well as already having glanced at a few C ranks, and has toyed around with the idea of entering them into the upcoming exam in 2 months, since he believes they're more than capable of doing well in both. Hayashi, however, strictly forbids this, stating he would prefer Hinata not go on a C rank or much less a B rank until she has at least half a year's experience under her belt. Or better yet, unless Kakashi would be willing to allow a Hyuga branch member to accompany him and serve as the acting commander on said missions. Both suggestions Kakashi takes slight offense to. However, he diplomatically resents his pushback, and reminds that when it comes to anything outside of missions, the Jonin had no say in how the Hyuga clan conducted themselves. But with all due respect, Hinata is his soldier now, and that means going on missions the way he sees fit. This only leads to Hayashi more vehemently refusing this until Kakashi sees that they'll get nowhere else doing this. Before he leaves, however, he is approached by Hazashi, who apologizes for the rashness of and defends his brother, revealing that Hayashi had, as of recently, become very subconsciously overprotective of both his daughters. A reaction he expected was due to the loss of his wife, obviously, but also in recognition of how poorly he'd allowed himself to treat his girls for a while after her death. Ultimately, he states that Hayashi needs to be shown that Hinata is not a frail little girl anymore, and in the end, she is destined to surpass them both, so he gives Kakashi the go-ahead to ramp up mission difficulty as he sees fit, expressing that he is willing to cover for him and convince his brother to see the truth. Kakashi graciously thanks the branch member for his help and leaves. However, unknown to both, someone has eavesdropped on these conversations. But this Plus Ultra fam is where we'll be leaving it off for right now. Hey everyone, so as always, I really hope you enjoyed, and I know I'm still keeping parts of this series fairly short and somehow slower in their individual story progression. I'd like you to know that I originally had this part planned to be a little over double this length, as it was going to cover the entirety of the Land of Waves, as well as the first half of the tuning exams. I wanted to have randomized matchups as well for the 3rd and 4th round, but I found myself unhappy with how briefly some plot points were being covered. So I've essentially split part 3 from ending the beginnings saga, I'm going to call it, and covering all that to just really feature the bell test and a bit of light training so we can continue building on our characters. That way that other stuff that was going to be in this part will be able to be covered with some more detail. So I think you should be able to look forward to getting all of the Land of Waves in one part and possibly the entirety of the tuning exams next time, based off the first bits of what is in part 4 script right now. And that also means that part 4 can be out a bit sooner than it was originally planned to. So definitely stay tuned on the channel, and like I said at the beginning of the video, make sure you're subscribed and keeping up with my content. All of our art this go round comes from official renders, so we actually don't have any shoutouts other than Maxu Chiha22 over on DeviantArt. Meaning we can focus on our patrons and channel members, and by the way, I finally remembered how to find all the names of our channel members. So Eric Dragon, John Sullivan, Genesium, Knuckles OX, Robert Ostergaard, Trent Rouse, Vest the Game, Samuel Viveros, Sage Serendipity, PJ9D III, Namalos Phantom, Jimmy Alexandre, Jamal Hayden, Jacoby Chainer, Infernate Beast 326, Inebriated, Drax, Dominic Wade, Dominique, Squad 100, Shannon Roberts, Omar Cousin, Jay Ray, Don Sauce, Normandy 1998, Dreadpool, Narku, Aaron Winters, Knuckles OX again, Pizza 15X, Zach Haji, DJ the Lazy Gamer, and Crimson Manifesto. As always, thank you all so much. Direct channel support is the most effective way to support my content and enables me to do a lot more with it than I would be able to do if it was just ad revenue supporting me. So when I say thank you from me, it's also a thank you from the entirety of the community, and we really appreciate you guys. If you individually listen to this right now would like to become a member or a Patreon, use the link in the doobly-doo or the join button next to subscribe. But with that said, there is absolutely nothing else to do but to tell you guys to take care of yourselves and the world around you, and as always, go beyond plus ultra. And I'll see you all next time.